Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Can I start, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Vyasa uvacha iti samsprashna samhristo vipranam roma harshani pratipuja vachastesham pravaktam upachakrame.
One second, Prabhu. I think what I did. Let me just change the. 1 second. Yeah. Jyoti Mataji, go ahead.
Ugrasrava Suta Goswami, the son of Roma Harsana, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply.
Text number 2, Sutta Uvacha. Yam pravrajantam anupetam upeta krityam dvaipayano viraha katara ajuhava putreti tanmayataya taravo binedush tam sarva bhuta hridayam munim anantosmi.
Srila Suta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Sukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyasa, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread of the ceremonies observed by the higher caste, his father Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father.'"
Yeah, text number 3. Ya swanubhavam akila suti saram ekam adhyatma deepam atitirasatam tamondam samsarinam karunaya purana guhyam tam vyasashunam upayami gurum muninam.
Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Suka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge, after having personally assimilated it by experience.
Text number 4. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiraye.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, who unto Naranarayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
Text number 5. Munaya sadhu prastoham bhavadvir lokamangalam yatkrita krishna samprashno yenatma suprasiddhati.
O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of these sort are capable of completely satisfying the self.
Text number 6. Savai pumsham paro dharmo yato bhaktir adokshaje ahaituki apratihata Yayatma Suprasiddhati.
The supreme occupation, Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self.
Number 7. Text number 7. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayate Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yat Ahaitukam.
By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world.
Text number 8. Dharma Swanosthita Pumsam Vishwakshena Katashuya Notpada Yadi Ratim Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam.
The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead.
Text number 9. Dharmasya haya hai apavargasya nartorta yopakalpate nartasya dharmai kantasya kamalab labaya hi smritaha.
All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to the sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification.
Text number 10. Kamasya nendriya patpritir labo jivate yavata jivasya tattva jijnasa nartonyasyeha karmabhi.
Life's desires should never be directed toward sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's works.
Text number 11. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sabhyate.
Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan.
Text number 12. Tachshraddhadana muneya jnana vairagya yuktaya pasyante atmani chatmanam bhakya sruti grihitaya.
Okay.
The seriously
Hi Krishna, dear devotees, can you please stay on mute? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti.
Text number 13. Ata pumbir dvijayesta varnashrama vibhagasha panustitasya dharmasya siddhir haritoshanam.
O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by
Indulekha Mataji, could you please mute yourself?
O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste, divisions, and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead.
Text number 14. Tasmad ekena manasa bhagavan satvatam pati Shrotavya kirtitavyasya jyeya pujasyya nityada.
Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees.
Text number 15. Yad anudyashina yuktaha karma grante nibadhanam chindanti ko vidastasya kona kurya katharatim.
With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message?
Text number 16. Shushruso Shraddha Danasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevanat.
O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva.
Text number 17. Srinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Sridiyantasto Hayabhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma Supersoul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, it's just 17 verses, right? Or shall I just?
I think that's it, Prabhu. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for giving
Thank
me
you. That was very beautifully sung verses. Thank you. And thank you, Jyoti Mataji, for the translation.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
So today we'll be discussing the text number 2, which is a very nice text. Shyam Prabhu, would you like to lead us into this text second again as well?
Yeah, sure, Prabhu. I'll read the Sanskrit part.
We'll do one line at a time. If you say Sutta Uvacha, I'll repeat behind you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everybody, Prabhu, so you can unmute yourself. Go ahead. You're muted, Shyam Prabhu.
We'll go line by line, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu. One line at a time.
Yeah. Sutta Uvacha
Sutta Uvacha
Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam
Yam Pravanjantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam
Dvaipayano Vedaha Kata Katara Ajuhava
Vapahino Viraha Katara Ajuhava
Putreti Tanmaya Taya Taravo Binidus
Putreti Tanmaya Taya Tarvom Vehe Abhinedas
Tam Sharvabhuta Hridayam Munim Anantosmi.
Tam Sarvabhuta Hridayam Munim Anantosmi. Thank you, Prabhu. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the great sage Srila Sukdev Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher caste, his father Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed response to the begrieved father.' Purport. The institution of Varna and Ashrama prescribes many regulative duties to be observed by its followers. Such duties enjoin that a candidate willing to study the Vedas must approach a bona fide spiritual master and request acceptance as his disciple. The sacred thread is a sign of those who are competent to study the Vedas from Acharya. or the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sukdev Goswami did not undergo such purificatory ceremonies because he was liberated soul from his very birth. Generally, a man is born as an ordinary being, and by purificatory process, he is born for the second time. When he sees a new light and seeks direction for spiritual progress, he approaches a spiritual master for instruction in the Vedas. The spiritual master accepts only the sincere inquirer as his disciple and gives him the sacred thread. In this way, a man becomes twice born or Dvija. After qualifying as a Dvija, one may study the Vedas, and after becoming well versed in the Vedas, one becomes a Vipra. A Vipra or qualified Brahmana thus realizes the Absolute and makes further progress in spiritual life until he reaches the Vaishnava stage. The Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of Brahmana. A progressive Brahmana must necessarily become a Vaishnava, for a Vaishnava is self-realized, learned Brahmana. Srila Sukdev Goswami was a Vaishnava from the beginning, therefore there was no need for him to undergo all process of the Varnashram institution. Ultimately, the aim of Varnashram Dharma is to turn a crude man into a pure devotee of the Lord, or a Vaishnav. Anyone therefore who becomes a Vaishnav accepted by the first class Vaishnav or Uttam Adhikari Vaishnav is already considered a Brahmana regardless of his birth or past deeds. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted this principle and recognized Srila Haridas Thakur as the Acharya of the holy name, although Thakur Haridas appeared in a Mohammedan family. In conclusion, Srila Sukadev Goswami was born a Vaishnav and therefore Brahmanism was included in him. He did not have to undergo any ceremonies. Any low-born person, be a Kirata, Huna, Andara, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Abhira, Sumbha, Yavana, Khasha, or even lower, can be delivered to the highest transcendental position by the mercy of Vaishnavas. Srila Sukdev Goswami was the spiritual master of Srila Suta Goswami, who therefore offers his respectful obeisances unto Srila Sukdev Goswami before he begins his answer to the questions of the sages at Nemesharanya. It's a very beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Just 1 second, I'm going to. Okay, so just before we begin the discussion on this wonderful verse from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and second chapter, second text, we'll recite Mangalacharan prayers, seeking the blessings of our previous spiritual masters, so that we can speak something on, and have a discussion on this verse. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanam Shrirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyat Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradaite Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Jaitam Shrutur Mama Manda Matirgati Mat Sarvasya Pradam Bhoje Radha Madan Mohano Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So the verse once again, translation. Srila Sudha Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the great sage Sukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher caste, his father Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed, only the three which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in the response to the begrieved father. Begrieved father.'" So just to bring things into the context for now, just wanted to share with you, we are now at the second chapter. Who will tell me the name of the chapter one? What was the chapter one entitled?
Question asked by rishis.
By the sages, that's right. Question by
Sages,
the
yeah.
sages. That was the first canto, first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. And who was asking questions to who in that chapter? Somebody else can tell me that.
Sure. Okay.
The sages, Prabhuji?
Yes, the sages, that's for
Sutta
sure.
Goswami?
Who were they asking?
The Sutta Goswami?
And which sages were asking?
6 of them?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Indra.
Sonaka Rishi, who was representing the 88,000 sages in the Naimisharanya, they were asking questions to Sutta Goswami.
That's correct. So in the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what was essentially happening was it had a prelude in the first three verses, which was called prelude as the beginning of the canto of the first, where in the first text the definition of the absolute truth was given. Then in the second text, the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam were established, that how that this is actual the religion, everything else is actually nothing but cheating. And then the third verse, there was an invitation for all of you and for all of us, including myself and everybody else in the world, to come and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, because it is meant for the ultimate benefit for all of us. It is explained in that verse that Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a reality distinguished from illusion, from the welfare of all. It is such an absolute truth which is penetrating, straight into our heart. And then from text 4 to 8, the sages, they were assembled in 1,000-year sacrifice, which was to satisfy the Lord and the devotees. A 1,000-year long sacrifice was, the idea was to have by the sages who were glorifying Sutta Goswami in this 1,000-year sacrifice. And then from text 5 to 8, the sages offered the seat to Sutta Goswami and they glorified. So when you invite a guest at home, the tendency or the idea, or at least the natural tendency, should be to be able to say some nice words, offer them a seat, an asan, offer them some water and something to eat. But the least you can do if you do not have any such facilities is at least you can say some nice words. So these sages were glorifying Sutta Goswami and glorifying his wonderful qualities and his exalted position as a Mahabhagavat. Then in text 9 to 23, the sages described and condemned the state of Kali Yuga. You will remember the text, right? What is that text? I'm forgetting the text. That in this age of Kali Yuga, the people are very short-lived. Their memory is extremely dull, and they're not able to remember things. And above all, they're very disturbed and unlucky. So this was mentioned in one of those verses. So how the Kali Yuga of the people are there, how much eagerness they have. And then finally, there were 6 questions asked at the end. And now you see in this particular chapter, which is the chapter 2, is beginning with Sutta Goswami is now responding to those questions. And in the first to 4th text, he's offering obeisances. And now in this particular text again, he's also now offering obeisances to who? To Sukadev Goswami, who was his spiritual master. So now we're going to discuss some of the key points from Prabhupada's purport. So let's pick up some really nice points Prabhupada makes here. In the first paragraph of this text, just wanted to bring a little bit of a context to all of you in relation, so it gives you an idea where we are, because there are so many dialogues going on in Srimad Bhagavatam, and at times it can be difficult to understand where we are. Today, His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj was giving a class, and he was explaining so beautifully that, when we read Bhagavatam, it's always nice to see what is the context, where are we in it, which sage is speaking, what is the setting like, and where are we in all this? Are we able to make it relevant? Are we able to relate what the subject matter is? So it's very important that we give our full attention to this Bhagavatam. After all, it is considered to be the Amala Puran, the spotless literature. So here it is explained, Prabhupada gives this in the paragraph 1, that the institution of Varna and Ashram prescribes many regulative duties to be observed by its followers. And such duties enjoin that a candidate willing to study the Vedas must approach a bona fide spiritual master and request acceptance as his disciple. The sacred thread is a sign of those who are competent to study the Vedas from the Acharya or the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sukadeva Goswami did not undergo such purificatory ceremonies because he was liberated soul from his very birth. So, what is happening here now? He's talking about, he's glorifying Sukadeva Goswami, and Srila Prabhupada is trying to focus on Sukadeva Goswami, so that he invites us to appreciate the exalted position of Sukadeva Goswami and why Sukadeva Goswami is actually offering obeisances and seeking his blessings. So here you see, this is the picture. In some of our acharyas explain that this was near Ganga, and some call it near Yamuna. We accept both the opinion because there is a variety in the spiritual world. However, most of the understanding is that this was on the banks of the Yamuna river, because that is the one which was flowing very close to Delhi at that time. So you see here, you have Sukadev Goswami who's standing there, and then you have Parikshit Maharaj who's seated there, and then you have all the various sages who are also assembled to hear from Sukadev Goswami. And it is explained that Sukadev Goswami, let me ask you, how long did he stay in the womb of his mother?
16 years.
16 years.
16 years.
16.
Thank you. And what was the name of his mother?
Vriti.
Vinita. Vinita?
Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you all 30 seconds to find the correct answer.
Kirtika.
Sorry,
Vriti.
Mataji.
Vriti.
Okay.
Prabhuji, Kirtika.
Kirtika. Okay. Anybody else has any other answers?
I think it's Vinita. Something like that. Vinita.
Okay. Okay, I'll give you all 30 seconds. Use Google, use whatever it takes. Find out the name of the mother of Srila Sukadev Goswami. His father was Srila Vyasadeva. Only got 15 seconds left. Let's see who can get it right.
Vatika. Vatika.
No, it wasn't Radhika.
No, Vatika. V-A-T-I-K. No.
It wasn't Vatika either. Anybody else? 5 seconds left.
Vatika. Vatika.
Pinjala.
It is legitimate from Vatika Shuka's son.
That's right. So I think there were a couple of names mentioned, but one of them is also Vatika, which was Suka's son. There is another name which I came across. I'm trying to, let me confirm that to you all, and I'll share that later on. However, the point I was trying to make is that he was there in the womb of his mother for 16 years before he came out. And while he was in the womb of his mother, he was constantly hearing from Srila Vyasadeva, his father, about Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is explained by Srila Prabhupada, our Acharya, our founder Acharya, that actually Sukdev Goswami attained the stage of perfection while he was in the womb. Because the moment he came out, he was already a Mahabhagavat. He was a self-realized soul. So he immediately left home and went to the forest. And in this particular verse, what is happening is the Vyasadeva is shouting out, saying that, "Where are you going, my son? Where are you going?" And all he could get in return was the echo of the trees were repeating the same question of Vyasadeva, what he was asking for his son actually. That is what he was able to hear. Of course, we understand from this pastime that initially when Sukdev Goswami was walking away, he did not care for anything. So it is in this particular purport, Prabhupada explains that there are 10 kind of different samskars a man should perform when when a family or a parent should perform, starting with the Garbhadan samskar when they're inviting a soul. And Prabhupada explains that it is not simply a matter of enjoyment of a sex, but it is a very spiritual activity where you invoke a child who you pray to become a devotee and who can also help liberate many other people in the world or share Krishna consciousness with them others. Otherwise, what is the point of having a child who cannot really have some understanding of Krishna consciousness and able to share with others? That's the perfection of a birth. So like this, there are many other samskars parents are supposed to give it to their children. And however, in this particular purport, we learn from Prabhupada that Sukdev Goswami was completely above this. There was no need for him. There was no need for him to approach a spiritual master, take initiation from him, because he had already accepted Srila Vyasadeva as his spiritual master, because he was taking the instruction when he was in womb. So he immediately left and just went away, at that time seeking impersonal ideology, although he already had a perfection in impersonalism. But when he heard the beautiful songs in the glorification of Lord Krishna, his mind completely changed and he became very convinced, and he became a personal devotee from an impersonal devotee of the Lord. So that transition took place for Sukdev Goswami later on. And here we see in this particular purport, Prabhupada is saying Srila Sukdev Goswami did not undergo such purificatory ceremony because he was a liberated soul from his very birth. So the moment he was born, he couldn't care less for what was going around. He did not want it to get entangled and he just walked away. So let's go and here, let's see what Prabhupada is saying in the remaining part of the purport. So Prabhupada is saying that the Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of a Brahmana. A progressive Brahmana must necessarily become a Vaishnava, for a Vaishnava is a self-realized learned Brahmana. So it's a very important point Srila Prabhupada is trying to make here. We should pay real attention here. You see, in India, there are still so many people who think this so-called Brahmana are only the Brahmanas by birth. But that's not the point here. The point here is the Brahmana can only be a Brahmana as per the qualities he has acquired over a period of time through the training process. That is a real Brahmana. So here, what an interesting comment has been made by Prabhupada is that it is not necessary that a Brahmana is a Vaishnava. However, a Vaishnava is an automatically a Brahmana because he is situated at a very high stage. So, of course, we call ourselves devotee, but oftentimes we should contemplate and really think that am I actually a devotee? Devotee means a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is one who's very dear to Lord Vishnu. So, are we already dear to Vishnu? So, one thing which is always nice when we are introducing ourselves or talking to others and telling others that, I'm a devotee of ISKCON. Of course, we may not literally mean it, but it's always nice to have that reality check, whether if you feel comfortable and confident in saying that you're a Vaishnava, by all means, but just by putting the Kantimala and the Tilak, we cannot claim ourselves to be a Vaishnava. What we can claim is to call ourselves a sadhaka, or a practicing sadhaka, or a practicing devotee of the Lord. Because that's what we are all doing. We haven't perfected our sadhana yet. We are sadhakas who have been given sadhana, a medium, to and a process which is called sadhya, and the Lord which we are worshipping, who is called Bhagavan. So we are right now in that process, trying to follow, and one day hopefully we will come to that point where we can become the devotees of the Lord. So here the point is being made that Prabhupada also gives, I think, I don't know if I have that here about Haridas Thakur. Yeah, let's read this. Ultimately, the aim of Varnashram Dharma is to turn a crude man into a pure devotee of the Lord or a Vaishnava. Anyone, therefore, who becomes a Vaishnava accepted by the first class Vaishnava or Uttam Adhikari Vaishnava is already considered a Brahmana, regardless of his birth or past deeds. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted this principle and recognized Srila Haridas Thakur as the Acharya of the holy name. Although Thakur Haridas appeared in a Mohammedan family, in conclusion Srila Sukadev Goswami was born a Vaishnav and therefore Brahmanism was included in him. He did not have to undergo any ceremonies. So this is the point I was trying to share with you all, that it's a very important point to note that actually Srila Sukadev Goswami, he was already a Vaishnava. He had already reached the stage of Brahmanism, and Prabhupada gives an example, very appropriate example of Srila Haridas Thakur, who was born in a Mohammedan family. However, because of his absorption and his character and his lifestyle, he was a pure devotee of the Lord, and he was chanting 3 lakh names every day. So much so that in his later part of the life, when he became so weak and elderly, and he was not able to maintain his body properly, that he one time Govinda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's servant, he used to go every day and give prasadam from Jagannath temple. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to send him. But one time he went and he saw that Haridas Thakur is lying down, he's barely able to get up. So he went and told this to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu personally came and met with Haridas Thakur, and he said, "My dear Haridas, now you don't have to worry about chanting so many rounds. You're old now." So Haridas Thakur said, "My dear Lord, I'm in a very conditioned stage of life that I have no longer taste and nor do I have any ability to chant the holy name." So this was the mood of Haridas Thakur. So he wasn't even willing to eat until he had completed his set number of rounds. And here, look at our lifestyle, that as soon as the bhoga is there or almost offered, and sometimes we're already thinking even before it's been offered that this is being cooked for me. But the moment we are trying to be asked to do or take some vows to stick to our devotional service nicely, the only thing, at least I can remember, my favorite prayer is Mahaprasade Govinde. My prayer is not that, "Oh my Lord, please save me. Oh my Lord, let me have some taste for chanting of your holy names. Oh my Lord, I do not have," like how Sachinandan Maharaj beautifully explaining and answering a devotee's question about reading Prabhupada books, that he was sharing that because of some samskars, I do not like to read books. And Maharaj said that if you just simply pray that I'm very conditioned, but I do like you, Prabhupada, and I'm very grateful to what you have given, so allow me to read these books. So like the prayers we can enter, But if you are constantly thinking that, "Oh, I only want sense gratification and I only want to enjoy," then our situation is very precarious. We can't get much help. So we have to try and follow in the footsteps of Srila. We don't have to imitate him, but we have to follow in the footsteps of Haridas Thakur and try to come to such a level where we really develop some nishtha, some attachment towards this holy name, and chant the holy name with utmost sincerity, actually. So, in conclusion, the modern activities of human societies are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, like, as we read, as Gokara, or the cows or the asses. Everyone is acting on a bodily concept of life involving society, friendship, and love for improvement of economic and political condition. And thus all activities are enacted in ignorance. The Supreme Personality of Godhead therefore comes to teach us how to act according to the Vedic principles. And in this age of Kali, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and preached that in this age, the Vedic activities cannot be systematically performed because the people are so fallen. That's why he gave us this recommendation from Shastra, which is Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Naste, Eva Naste, Eva Naste, Gatir Anyatha. So in this age of Kali Yuga, our only shelter, our only hope is taking the holy name. And that holy name actually will build our qualification all the way to the platform of becoming a Vaishnava one day, and superseding all these stages of becoming a Brahmana and following these things step by step. So we are very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has created our good fortune by introducing us to the Krishna consciousness movement. Today we were at my daughter's school, Gurukul. There was a nice event on a Sunday. They were celebrating Gaur Purnima. We had a senior disciple of Prabhupada called Ranchor Prabhu, who wrote a few books. One of them he wrote is called When the Sun Shines. It's such a beautiful book I read. It's all about the Hare Krishna movement, how it started in UK especially. And I was so much appreciating standing there and, Prabhu was speaking, he was doing the kirtan, that these devotees have so much of love for Prabhupada. I was noticing Sachinandan Maharaj when he was giving the class, the oceanic smile Maharaj had when he was reading the purport of Srila Prabhupada, that imagine what level of affection they have for Prabhupada, that they're relishing Prabhupada's words so much actually. And the proof of that relishment is that all those who attended the class or who hear from such Vaishnavas, it leaves a taste, it leaves a sense of enthusiasm to follow this process even more enthusiastically than we can actually imagine. See, this is the beauty of spiritual life. In material life, yes, of course, you get inspiration under a good leader to perform good things, but unfortunately, it does not endeavor or it doesn't lead us to a state of very happiness. Ranchor Prabhu was saying today that he asked a question to somebody, Prabhupada asked, I think, something, and I think an audience asked a question that I can't remember what the question was, but Prabhupada said Rancho Prabhu will answer that. And Rancho Prabhu just began by saying one line, that this world has pleasure and pain. And Prabhupada said, stop. He said, there is no pleasure, there is only pain. So, and Prabhupada was so right that we may think seemingly there is some pleasure, but the pleasure, actually it is there, but that pleasure comes from a state of Krishna consciousness which we have to cultivate in our heart. And that is what the real pleasure is. When we are able to cultivate that real sense of happiness, that is what will take us, bring us closer to Krishna. And that is what the pleasure will be in this world. Otherwise, it's all full of pain. And I mean, we don't have to be, far from that understanding. We can see around us so much of pain is inflicted on the people around the world. And last 2 years has been a great classic example of how Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is telling Arjuna, A Brahma Bhuvana Loka Puranavartino Arjuna, that from the topmost planet of Brahma down to the lowest planet, all the planets are places of miseries wherein repeated birth and death is taking place. So, but what we need to do is we need to transcend. And in order to transcend this state of unhappiness or state of misery, we have to understand the Lord's activities, his appearance, why he takes birth here, why he attracts us towards him, how he does this, takes these beautiful pastimes of lifting Govardhan Hill. What purpose does he have? His only purpose is to attract us. Another thing I remember from Sachinandan Maharaj class, which is so sweet, is that he was reading, I think, a letter from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was explaining very beautifully that how in this material world, say for example, right now, you can take my example. I think it's a very good example, Divyanam. So Divyanam Das, when I like to hear when somebody's talking, oh, Divyanam is this, that, I'll become so happy. Oh, you're talking to me. Oh, you Prabhu, you're glorifying me. Oh, I'm really, I start to think and I get so puffed up. So this is our tendency. And Prabhupada said that in this, he was saying in the letter, there's nothing which exists in this world which doesn't exist in spiritual world. So Krishna has a similar tendency, but he put it in I'm paraphrasing it in a very, very beautiful way, that Krishna likes it when someone says, that blue boy is really nice, by the way. Did you know he killed the Kalia and he danced on his hoods? Do you have an idea? He actually picked up the Govardhan Hill on his pinky fingers. Do you know he has some beautiful devotees like Narad Muni, Prahlad Maharaj, who have been glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam? So like that, when you talk or take his many names, Krishna, Yadava, Mukunda, Hari Murari, any name you take, he feels very appreciated and think, oh, this boy is talking about me. So that is our Lord Krishna, that is how beautiful Krishna is. He immediately he likes to hear about him, when we are glorifying. And that is all we have to do in order to, become Vaishnava. And we don't, we can very much come to the level of becoming a pure devotee of the Lord by following these pure devotees. That's the easiest way, actually. So I want to stop here because I'll take another 5-7 minutes of any reflections or question anyone may have. As I understand, today we also have a prayer which we will be singing. So if anybody has any comments or question, feel free to ask. And then we will have Mataji singing Shikshastakam. Anju Mataji will be reciting Shikshastakam with the translation. So I know the idea was for her to do it during those 5 days when we were leading up to Gaur Purnima. However, I think it couldn't happen. But now we can at least, it's always a good idea to chant Shikshastakam at any part of the day. But before we do, let's take 5-6 minutes of any comments or questions or any reflections anybody may have. Reflection is something which you heard, you can reflect back. If you found anything helpful in the monologue or Srila Prabhupada's purport, which we kind of went a little bit deeper into it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Very nicely explained. Every time we hear the Bhagavatam from different devotees, we get different ideas and we get different realization. And today I appreciate it very much when you mentioned the name of the mother of Sukadeva Goswami. So I learned something and I learned more. Thank you very much. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else? I'm just gonna pull up Shikshastakam so I can share my screen. Okay, if there are no comments or questions, okay, there is some messages on the chat box. Thank you all devotees for giving me this opportunity to recite the Shyam Prabhu. Thank you, Shyam Prabhu. Thank you for all your services you do, and thank you to you, Jyoti Mataji, as well for your services. Hare Krishna. Okay, so if there are no comments or questions, we can go straight into Shastakam. So remind us, Santosh Mataji, who's doing this?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Mamta Mataji will be reciting the English translation first, and then
Okay.
Anju Mataji will be reciting the
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So let's do the translation, Mamta Mataji. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, my humble obeisances to you, to all devotees. Prabhuji, I'll just start with a little bit of extra information down below. I thought that was important. So the lower bit and the remarks of extra information. I'll just show that Prabhuji first. So can you all hear me clearly? Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed his disciples to write books on the science of Krishna, a task which his followers have continued to carry out down to the present day. The elaborations and expositions on the philosophy taught by Lord Chaitanya are, in fact, the most voluminous, exacting, and consistent due to the system of disciplic succession. Although Lord Chaitanya was widely renowned as a scholar in his youth, one of his famous doctrines he left behind was the Siksashtaka. These 8 verses clearly reveal his mission and precepts. These supremely valuable prayers are translated herein. They are from the chapter 20 in the Antya-lila. Translation. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is a prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. They're not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaja Ananda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separations, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. If anyone recites or hears these 8 verses of instruction by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his ecstatic love and devotion for Krishna increase day by day. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. So, Anju Mataji, if you like to now recite the verses, we will recite along with you behind the muted mics.
Okay, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. चेतो दर्पणे मार्जनम् भव महादावाग्नि निर्वापणम् श्रेयकैरव चन्द्रिका वितरणम् विद्यावधू जीवनम् आनन्दाम्बुदिवर्धनम् प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृत स्वादनम् सर्वात्मा स्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्ण संकीर्तनम् नाम कारी बहुधा निज सर्वशक्ति तत्रार्पिता नियमित स्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन् ममापि दुर्दैवमीदृश्मिहाजनिनानुरागा ऋणादपि सुनीचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानिना मानदेना कीर्तिनीय सदा हरि न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवताद् भक्तिर्हेतुकी त्वयि अयि नन्दतनुजा किङ्करम् पतितं मां विषमे भवाम्बुधो कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थितधूलि सदृशं विचिन्तया नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदरुद्धया गिरा पुलकैर्निचितं वपु कदा तव नाम ग्रहणे भविष्यति युगायितं निमीषेण चक्षुषा प्रावृषयितं शून्यायितं जगत् सर्वं गोविन्द विरहेण मे आश्लिष्य वापादिरतां पुनुष्टुमा अदर्शनान् मर्महतां करोतु वा यथा तथा वा विदधातु लम्पटो मत्प्राणनाथस्तु स एव नापर हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे.
Thank you so much, Anju Mataji. Very beautifully sung. Very nice. Thank you. So, dear devotees, it is nearly 8:45. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Mamta Mataji and Anju Mataji for reciting the Shikshastakam verse. Really nice to be able to meditate on before you go take rest tonight. So, thank you, everybody. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of the evening and a very Krishna conscious night. And I'll see you all very shortly. Thank you, everyone. Vancha kalpataru vishya kripa sindhu devata
पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare